it's good to express your feelings. You get to the schoolyard, and that's where the training really begins, on the playground. That's where you learn, if I cry, I'm mocked, or if I cry, they're going to beat me up. We start suppressing and compressing all of our emotions in our chest. And what happens is, and what nobody tells us, is when we start doing this, we don't just suppress the negative emotions, like the ones I referred to. We start suppressing the great emotions that we actually want to express, like love, kindness, and forgiveness, and joy. When you do breathing patterns, you can access these emotions again. And then what that does, it allows you to begin to express the emotions you want to express again, so we don't live locked in a prison of our own making in our chest. Hello, my name is Max Strom, and I teach across the world, 45 cities a year, about 12, 13 countries a year. I teach breath-initiated movement. It's a hybrid that I've created called Inner Axis, and it's a hybrid of Qigong, yoga, movement therapy, and really emphasizes breathing as a transformative practice. So not just something to improve the body, oxygenate the body at a high level, and even more than just to relax, but to transform ourselves emotionally through breathing. And what I mean by that is we have so much depression, anxiety, and sleeplessness in the world now. I'm focused on helping people with that, because without happiness, what are we doing all this for? So what I want to talk to you about today is the inclusivity of men, that rare species that you occasionally see looking somewhat awkward and embarrassed at a yoga studio, or the stiff guy in the back of the room that's kind of embarrassing to watch, but he's doing his best. I started out as one of those guys. And at heart, I'm still one of those guys. So I think I have some insight into the problem of inclusivity of men. Part of it has to do with the men's psychology, which is conditioned, not really inherent. But also part of it has to do with the way studios are decorated, they retail, they sell, even the languaging that female yoga teachers will teach in a teacher training environment, not thinking that men speak differently about certain things and in certain ways. So I want to talk about these things. So, first of all, let's talk about a little bit about the psychology of men and how it's different. So when I was dragged to my first class, and I was dragged because it wasn't something I was interested in. I was 35 years old, and at that time, for exercise, I was running about 4 miles every other day, and I was lifting weights. And I'd been lifting pretty heavy weights, and I'm telling you that so that you understand how tight I was, because I did almost no stretching. I had never been taught to stretch, and I had no idea about stretching. So I did what a lot of men do, is we do contraction-based exercises. When you think about it, when you lift weights, when you do anything where you're pushing or pulling, jumping, it's all contraction-based. The muscles are being asked to contract so that they become stronger, but they also become tighter. And in the case of men building up their upper body or their abdominals, it emphasizes these muscles. So cosmetically, contraction-based exercises are what most people go for when they're trying to look better. Yeah. So that's what I was doing. And my new girlfriend, she was an avid yoga practitioner, very flexible. And I woke up one morning with her and she said, guess what we're doing on your birthday? I said, what? And she said, I'm taking you to your first yoga class. To which I said, great. But inside I was thinking, oh no, I thought it was going to be something exciting. And she took me to a medium level class, which was, I don't know how to describe it. It was a hatha yoga class, but it was very challenging. And I knew I would go with her and put on a good face and do my best, and I knew I would never go back. I wasn't interested in it because at that time I thought yoga was a stretch class for women with some kind of potential guru worship involved. And I had my reasons for believing that, because I had been exposed to that sort of thing in Santa Cruz, California, where I was born. So I didn't think I would like it. And when I arrived at the class, I remember thinking, why are there all those shoes out here? The shoes were outside the front door, and I thought maybe they were giving them away to the poor. So I was really confused. I didn't know why all these shoes were out there, because nobody told me you practice barefoot. Because I came in with gym mentality. Don't forget that. The guys come in with fitness gym or weight room or track or football mentality. So I went into the class, obviously without my shoes at this point, and I looked around, and my competitive mind, my sports mind, said to myself, these people don't look like they're in very good shape. This will be all right. I can do this. I thought I was in better shape than any of them because I had more contraction-based muscles. And when we started practicing, one of the first things we did was this posture that the teacher said was called downward facing dog. And in my mind, I chuckled, and I said, what a stupid name. We also don't even remember maybe what it's like to be a beginner, where the names of the postures, even if they're in English, can seem somewhat ridiculous. Unfortunately, this teacher didn't use much Sanskrit, otherwise I would have been even more put off. Because I'm thinking, what is he saying? Why am I expected to know that? Nobody handed me a sheet saying these are the names of the postures, Anyway, after a while I started worrying because I started sweating profusely. I couldn't believe how hard it was, holding downward dog and all of these standing postures. And I started to sweat and sweat until there was a huge puddle of sweat on my mat. And because of the sweat, and I guess I'd had a lot of olive oil the day before, it was quite slippery. And I fell down. I slipped on, doing triangle or something, and fell down to where I heard stifled laughter around me. And it got worse and worse, meaning it got harder and harder until my arms were shaking and my legs were shaking. And there was more and more sweat. And I fell down 2 or 3 more times. So you can imagine, I'm 6'6", falling, bam, falling, bam. People try not to laugh. And the sweat grew, the pond of sweat grew so large that it started expanding beyond my mat and going over on one side toward the mat of another woman that I didn't know. And I was horrified by this. I thought, I don't want my puddle of sweat to get onto her mat. I'd never sweated so much. And anyway, it went on like this, and I got nauseous. And finally I looked at the exit door, and I thought, maybe the next time everybody's head is down, I'll just run out the door. I was really demoralized and confused. But after the class, that night I had a birthday party. And my friends noticed that I was different. Now, they didn't know I had gone to a yoga class that day. They just said, you look different, or you look lighter, or you have more of a sparkle in your eye, or you look more relaxed, these sort of comments. They just kept coming in from everybody who arrived. So I thought that was interesting, because I didn't know that you could see it. I just knew that I felt different. And then at night I slept better than I had slept for years. I woke up so relaxed and so tension-free in my body. So that was great, but even better, this sort of mild state of euphoria continued for 2 or 3 days. And so I knew I was on to something, and I decided to try it again, but to try a beginner's class, so it wouldn't be a crisis when I practice. So I'm telling you this because when I talk to other males who come to yoga, especially if they're athletic, they have similar experiences. So imagine you're a man walking into a studio, and while you're waiting, you look at the retail section. All the clothes are for women. There are bangles for sale, oils for sale, tchotchkes, incense, all of which the majority of men, especially beginners, but people new to this world, might not be interested in buying it at all. So right away it feels culturally like a woman's domain, that you've entered a woman's domain. And the exercise, which is what you call it when you first come in, is strength building, but strange, because you're not used to holding things like downward dog for long periods of time, even if you lift weights. We get that part, but then there's all this stretching. And if you come into it with a sports mind, you think whoever is the most flexible wins. And clearly, I'm not the most flexible. In fact, I look around, I'm the least flexible. Therefore, I'm losing at this. Therefore, I'm embarrassed, humiliated. I might even feel shame. I feel like a beginner, like a child. It's uncomfortable. And you want to work hard, like with weights, you can push as hard as you want until your muscles fail. We do that all the time. So we approach stretching like that. Stretch as hard as you can, and then you start tearing muscles. It's a completely different mindset. You have to feel your muscles. And so it's a foreign way of exercising, because now we're not only doing contraction-based exercises, but stretching. And we've never been taught stretching. And if it's so important, why weren't we taught it earlier? And sometimes yoga teachers forget to tell students that when you stretch muscles, it triggers relaxation. When you stretch muscles, it triggers the relaxation response in the body. It's important to know that. If I had known that for the first 2 years of my practice, I might have paid more attention to being gentle with stretching and not pulled both my hamstrings competitively in one single class. So the culture is feminized, and the language. Teacher might say, do this, put your tushy here, spread your pinky finger, your baby toe, your tummy. This is how a mother talks to a child. So once again, we're put in the position of, okay, I'm not being talked to like a grown man, I'm being talked to like a child, and you're my mother. This can be very confusing. So a man has never been taught, most likely, to take care of his body. He's used his body as a weapon. Most sports, you think, my body is a weapon. I run through people. I run over people. I want to get as strong as possible. I don't want to be vulnerable. And there's the key word here, is vulnerable. Yoga makes the man and the woman feel very vulnerable emotionally, because it is vulnerable. So it's hard for us, because I'll tell you how I felt growing up in a Northern European type culture family. German father, American mother. There's nothing good about vulnerability. This was never said to me, but this is what I ended up with in my education, my nervous system. Vulnerability leads to nothing good in life. Vulnerability means you're going to fail. It means you're weak. It means you're going to have a shameful life. It means if I'm vulnerable with women, they're going to think less of me because they want me to be strong, always. And these ideas get programmed in our head at a very early age, starting at around 5 or 6 years old. And these work their way right into the yoga class, to where now I'm being asked to be sensitive. I'm asked to feel. I'm asked questions like, how does that feel when you're in this? When you're lifting weights, no one says, how does that feel when you lift 400 pounds? What emotions are you feeling? This is a foreign concept. So because we don't like to be vulnerable, because we were trained that way, the first thing yoga starts making us feel is vulnerable. And then, of course, the breathing aspect. That really makes us feel open and vulnerable and maybe emotional. And then you're lying in total relaxation at the end of class with tears coming down your face. This happened to me for a year. Every class at the end, when I was lying down, everybody had their eyes closed. I wouldn't sob, but I'd have these tears just trickling down the sides of my face. And of course, I'd do the usual rapid removal of the tears. Never talked about it. But then, as a year went by, I noticed that people started commenting again that I seemed happier, more relaxed, more still, more quiet in my body. And what I started to feel was happier, more content, really. In other words, a lot of desires that I had just started dissipating because I felt fine. If you're full, you don't want food. If you're well rested, you don't need to take a nap. I felt like I didn't need anything after a practice. I felt like I don't need to go anywhere, say anything, kiss anybody, eat anything, nothing, perfectly happy. This was an astonishing revelation, astonishing discovery. I felt like I'd struck gold. From a cost-benefit analysis, this is an extraordinary find. But I had to work my way through vulnerability. I had to learn that when I was doing something with my body, I had to feel it. Am I working 100%, 50%? What's just the right amount? 60%, 62%? Is that pain I'm feeling, or is that sensation? Am I pulling a muscle, or am I stretching it? So suddenly the mind had to go into the body and feel all these things, which many women are trained as children to do because they're introduced to dance. And as dancers, quite often they're taught to feel and examine their body. Women are taught to take care of their body, I'm generalizing, of course, depending on your household, to what we call pamper the body, to use lotions, to get massages, to get facials. The majority of men don't grow up like that. You don't get your first facial at 12 years old. If you're a male, you're being taught to throw a football or something like that. So because of our backgrounds are so different, we come at these practices with a very different mindset. So I think teacher trainings could include more of that so that the teachers understand how to talk to men, how to make them feel comfortable, and to preempt some of these problems. So the chest, which is where our lungs are, as you know, is a storehouse of emotions. And once we start doing true breath work, where we're doing ocean breathing, or ujjayi breathing as it's often called, the whole time we're practicing, our emotional life can be accessed. In other words, all the stuff we buried because we were taught, don't be afraid, don't show fear, don't show grief. That relationship that didn't work out, just stuff it. Your friend who died when you were in high school, stuff it down. Don't talk about it. I'll give you a really great example. A friend of mine who's English said, you know, Max, when I was 9 years old, my sister died. She was 12. I loved my sister so much. And after the funeral, my parents said to me, we will never discuss this again. We will never speak of this again. That's the training a lot of us come to yoga with. We don't even talk about our feelings, even something as important as the death of someone we dearly love. Now, in terms of our emotional health, we know that we're in a runaway condition, men and women, everybody. 50% of us, roughly, have some sort of anxiety disorder. Way too many of us have depression. Some of us have anxiety and depression. One of the most common problems now are sleep issues. Suicide rate going up. And of suicides, 75% of successful suicides are men. Because we men are trained to suppress emotions, we tend to suppress all of them. We can end up being in somewhat of a shut-down state, like we're walking around in a suit of armor, and on our chest is this silo, this container, this ice chest of all the grief we've ever felt, all the rage we've ever felt, the loneliness, the fear, because we're not allowed to express it or talk about it. You know, a man will never say to another, how are you doing? And the other one says, well, you know, I've been actually very lonely and afraid recently. How are you? Yeah, I'm going through a lot of grief. Let's talk. This doesn't happen. So we walk around with these ice chests, literally frozen emotions in us. And then our significant other or spouse might say, why can't you express yourself more? Why can't you express love more? Why can't you say you love me? Sometimes you seem so shut down, so removed, so distant. I never know what you're feeling. Things like that. These are very common, and I know some of you can relate to one side or the other of this conversation. And we're not going to change that unless we do something about it directly and proactively. And one way you can do it is to move into the body. In other words, do a practice like yoga, like qigong, that opens the body. You think, what does that have to do with it? Well, the emotions are in the body. We express our emotions with our body. Just think about it. I mean, starting with the face, I'm angry. You know, oh, he's angry because his face just changed. So my body is feeling the anger. My face changes. I start breathing differently because I'm really angry now, and my voice raises, and my fists go white knuckled, as we say. Or if I'm feeling joyful suddenly, I see somebody I haven't seen in a long time, you can see that in my body. The body expresses the emotions, but the body also contains them. So when you go into a practice where you bring your mind, your consciousness into your body for an hour and a half, then you start to feel your emotions again, and then you can express them. It gives voice to them, and it changes your life. It changes your relationships, I promise you. I cannot believe the difference in how I relate to people now compared to how I did before these practices. It's almost like two different people. I went through 10 years without crying in my life. I would never talk about feelings like shame, fear, grief, etc. If someone else was crying, I wouldn't know how to respond. I didn't know what to say. I was just awkward. It was horrible. If someone started to break down in front of me, it was almost a crisis for me. What do I do now? So I had no language for it. So if we directly work on healing these things, it affects all of our relationships, business too. Because people start to trust us more, they can see us more. We're not so veiled and armored. They can see us. They can believe in us as leaders. They can trust us as family members. They can know how we're feeling because we don't look exactly the same when we're angry or not angry. So a practice like yoga is key, I think, for emotional health. So many men say, I should try yoga, it'll help my golf game, I hear, or I should stretch more, you know. But I want you to know, in case you didn't already, that the militaries are starting to understand that yoga and in particular breathing exercises can really help with post-traumatic stress syndrome. So we have the most macho men in the world. You have these battle-hardened soldiers coming back from war with post-traumatic stress syndrome, and they can't reintegrate into their family, their community. They have nightmares, suicidal thoughts, in some cases worse than just thoughts. And the medication that's being used and the talk therapy has been somewhat successful, but not nearly enough. And that's why we have around 22 suicides per day amongst returning soldiers. But they've learned that doing yoga and breathing and some meditation really helps. They've done studies now. We have proof of this. So now militaries are starting to take notice and integrate yoga and breathing into the programs. In fact, the Netherlands, where I live now, is the first army in the world, military force, that has a voluntary yoga program for their whole population. So things are changing. It's being recognized in the medical world. I'm being invited more and more to speak to doctors, psychologists, etc., because now we know for sure that it works. But I wanted to speak for a moment about the soldiers, because these soldiers aren't practicing yoga and doing breathing because they think it'll help their golf game or their workout, or so they can be better soldiers. They're trying to be better people. They're trying to become healthy emotionally again and not live in depression and anxiety and panic attacks. So think about that, because that's the central problem of our society now, is depression, anxiety, panic attacks, the rise in suicide. So if you approach your practice for those reasons and for a higher level of intimacy, communication, friendship, you're going to get those things from your practice. And you'll also improve your golf game. And you'll also improve whatever else you're doing in terms of your bodily health, lower back problems, etc. That's also going to happen. But I suggest approaching it from the point of view of emotional health. So I think it's time that we men stop constantly preparing for a battle that we're probably never going to fight, to prepare to be warriors. I mean, literally warriors. It's like we're constantly training for war, and to start training for life, start training for relationships, start training for community. And that's going to be the push and the real change that we need. And it's not difficult, and it's not expensive. And you can do it even in your own home. And for the yoga community, I think it would be great if teachers and studios took on this attitude as well. Because if soldiers will come to yoga and breathing for emotional reasons, so will non-soldiers. Let's reach out to men, make them feel more welcome, more at home, talk to them in a language that they can understand. But don't pander to them, don't lower the bar. Approach them from what it will do for them emotionally and their relationships, their sleep, and all the other physical benefits they'll get. And then it doesn't hurt, of course, to keep a list of all the top athletes in the world who practice yoga now. So a lot of the men who say, I don't want to practice yoga, I'm not interested in it, I'm going to stay home and watch the game, they're watching probably a team that practices yoga, and they don't even know it. So educate them on that. And I think that we might increase the population of men exponentially. And this could help everyone. Their spouses, their girlfriends, their children, everybody. Thank you.